Down a dozen. Look at Ivey. Oh, my!
Jaden Ivey, a 6'4" guard out of Purdue, was arguably the most electric player in college basketball last season. After winning a world title in FIBA Under-19s this past summer, Ivey came back to Purdue and took the vaunted sophomore leap. Drawing comparisons to Ja Morant, Ivey became must-watch television, and now this elite athlete is taking the jump to the NBA. When looking at Ivey's positives, the first one is obvious if you've watched him at all, and that is his athleticism. The dude is an athletic freak of nature and seemed to be playing by a different set of physical rules in college ball last season. There were many jaw-dropping highlights in which it seemed like physics did not apply to Jaden Ivey. Even by NBA standards, this dude's quickness, speed, and vertical jumping ability will be elite at the NBA level, and from day one, he will make a case for being the fastest shooting guard in the NBA. This athletic ability makes Ivey a menace in transition, and he is almost impossible to stop once he has a head of steam. He is an elite transition player whether he has the ball or while he's filling the lane on the wings. His athleticism also helps him tremendously as a finisher. If he has a runway, he's always a threat to throw down a poster dunk on whoever's in his way, but he also is very comfortable finishing layups at full speed and has a level of craftiness as well as physical ability to be able to hang and hit layups that make him very hard to stop in the paint. The fourth positive for Ivey is his 3-level scoring potential. While we just touched on his finishing, Ivey's 3-point shot was above 40% for a good part of this past season. While he had a late season slump, Ivey showed that he was capable of knocking down threes at a semi-regular basis and showed solid flashes of being able to hit threes off the dribble. The biggest question comes from the mid-range, which we will talk about more in a second, but I believe with some proper coaching and refining that Ivey can be a solid threat from there as well. And finally, at 6'4" with a 6'10" wingspan and elite athleticism, Ivey has the potential to be a very good defensive player. He shows highlights of playing the passing lanes off the ball, turning steals into transition looks, and has some solid flashes on the ball as well. While his motor is inconsistent and he has a lot of defensive lapses, if these can be cleaned up, he has the potential to be a serious two-way player. Now let's look at some of the areas where Ivey needs to improve, the first of which is his ball handling. While he's an athletic freak and that allowed him to get wherever he wanted on the court in college, his athleticism won't be quite as much of an advantage at the NBA level, and he's going to have to refine his ball handling and become tighter with his dribble. Ivey also has to become a better decision maker. There were times where Ivey would shoot some low quality shots while passing up higher quality looks in the same stretch of play. There was also times where Ivey missed reads where he should have kicked out to a teammate and instead tried to force his own offense. He took strides his sophomore year as a passer, however this area of his game needs to be refined as well. The third area to improve for Ivey would be his in-between game. Right now he's a menace attacking the rim and capable of knocking down threes, however in between those areas he definitely struggles. He shoots a lot of 12 to 15 foot push shots that are way too flat. While Ja Morant has shown that you can be an NBA star without much of an in-between game if you're an elite athlete, which Ivey definitely is, it'd still be a good thing for Ivey to add to his game, which would make him harder to defend. Ivey also needs to become a more consistent three-point shooter. If he can accomplish this, it'll open up his dribble drive game even more. And then the fifth and final improvement area for Ivey is his defensive consistency. There's no reason he should be a below average defender, but there was numerous times last season where he hurt Purdue on the defensive end. A lot of these things can be easily cleaned up, so I have no worries with Ivey in this regard, but it is definitely something for him to prioritize. As far as how Ivey's game translates to the NBA level, he might have the most translatable, surefire skill in this entire draft, which is his athleticism. He is going to be a special athlete on the NBA level, and there's absolutely no doubt about that. When it comes to prospects that look like they're good shooters or good ball handlers or good in another way, there's always the chance that somebody who shot well from the college three-point line doesn't shoot as well with the speed and the further distance offense of the NBA three-point line. When it comes to guys that create off the dribble, it's harder to do so in the NBA, so some things that might have worked in college might not work in the NBA. But when it comes to athleticism, you know that what you see is what you're gonna get, and Jaden Ivey is the most special athlete in this draft. We've seen it with Ja Morant, where his athleticism translated directly to the NBA. Now, Ja Morant had to refine some skill areas in his game in order to become the Ja Morant that he is today, and Jaden Ivey's going to have to do the same, but at the very least, he's going to be a dynamite athlete. However, I am a little bit worried about the other skill areas. His decision making, him not being the best ball handler, him not having the best in-between game, some shooting inconsistency, makes it so that he might end up being more of a bust than people think. Ivey's going to have to do some serious work in certain areas in order to become a really good NBA player. He also has some work to do to be a guy you can consistently put the ball in his hands at the NBA level, and you can trust him with that. And then he has some work to do to become a guy who plays better off the ball. He can be an elite cutter, but he had the ball in his hands so much at Purdue, and when he didn't, a lot of their offense ran through Trevion Williams and Zach Edey in the low post, where Jaden Ivey didn't cut a whole lot that I saw. So in order to become a better off-ball player, just to fit into a team concept more, obviously he has to become a more consistent shooter, but then a guy with his speed and athleticism should be a phenomenal cutter. And if you have some bigs that can pass, if you run a motion offense, I mean, just think about Golden State and Ivey moving within that half-court offense, then it will get him some backdoor cuts, some lobs. He'll be able to create situations where he has a lane without having to set it up with the dribble move, such as coming off a curl and catching the ball going downhill. Ivey should excel in situations like that if he becomes better moving off the ball, even if he doesn't refine all his on-ball skills. But in terms of being a guy you can potentially run the offense through, I think he has to just develop a couple counters to certain situations. He has to become a little bit better of a pull-up three-point shooter so that when guys are backing up, when he's about to attack, he can make them pay for that. And guys definitely back up given how fast Jaden Ivey is. He has to make on-ball defenders pay for playing his drive, because that is what defenses are more worried about, is Jaden Ivey attacking the rim off the dribble compared to his three-point shot. But then beyond that, he needs to develop a better floater, and I think he will be able to. His feel in between the rim and the three-point line isn't the best, and he's going to need to end up in a situation that helps coach that. If he doesn't develop an in-between game, then he's going to have to become even better of a finisher around the rim. He's already pretty dang good in that regard, but Ja Morant is so creative and crafty and is able to contort his body in such unique ways, and that's what's helped him become the star that he is today, because he gets to the paint more than any other guard and finishes regularly. Either Ivey needs to become like that in order to become a star, or he needs to improve his in-between game. And then defensively, I think Ivey can be average right away as a team defender, just playing off the ball. He has to become more focused. On the ball, it'll be interesting to see what he can become, because I could see him becoming a near lockdown on-ball defender, given his physical traits. But it's just something that we haven't really seen yet out of him, and there are freak athletes in the NBA that don't end up being good on-ball defenders. So I wouldn't necessarily predict that to happen for him. His on-ball defense is just kind of a wild card for me in terms of his NBA projection. In terms of his floor and his ceiling, I think his floor is lower than the floors for Paolo Banchero, Jabari Smith, Chet Holmgren, simply because the only bankable skill is his athleticism, and while that'll definitely translate, the three players above him have some offensive traits that you can put more stock in. With Jabari Smith and Chet Holmgren, it's their shot. With Paolo Banchero, he's a better decision maker, and his playmaking is more unique at the power forward spot. And then obviously Jabari Smith and Chet Holmgren are better prospects defensively, so I could see Ivey being a guy who might not become a starter if things don't pan out for him. I could see him being a sixth man energy guy off the bench. In the best case scenario, I could see this dude being an absolute star because he's almost unguardable off the dribble. His three-point shot looks good enough right now to be able to have some confidence in it developing to the point where it needs to be. And if he can knock down threes consistently, there's no way you could take away his three-point shot and his dribble drive game. And then if he can become a little bit better decision maker and a little bit better playmaker, then all of a sudden you have a guy that can run your offense as maybe the number one guy on a championship contender. As far as good team fits for Jaden Ivey, I would like to see him in Detroit because I think he's a solid fit next to Cade Cunningham. He's a little bit undersized for the shooting guard position, but Cade Cunningham's a big point guard, so I think that meshes well. And I think Jaden Ivey and Cade Cunningham would be the start of a really good transition team in Detroit. They need some guard help, and I think Ivey would definitely fit well there. I also like Indiana is a fit for him because he's from Indiana, played his college ball in Indiana at Purdue, so keeping him in state would be a good thing for the Indiana Pacers. You'd probably have a loyal star on your hands if the Pacers could get their hands on him, and I think the Pacers could be a team that would take him in the top 3. Sacramento could also use some guard help, but with De'Aaron Fox there, I don't like Ivey's fit long-term next to him. I think the Kings should explore trading De'Aaron Fox and trying to get a similar caliber player at maybe a different position, and then you could draft Ivey if you move up to 4 if you're Sacramento, but I think Ivey next to Fox wouldn't really work. But the other team that I really like for Ivey would be New Orleans with the Lakers pick. That's currently at 8th. It has a 26% chance of moving into the top 4, and if it does, Jaden Ivey with Zion Williamson would be a freakishly athletic duo to have. And a CJ McCollum, Jaden Ivey backcourt would be interesting. The Pelicans could use another backcourt player. They've been playing Devontae Graham a lot there, but if the Pelicans were able to get Jaden Ivey, you could be looking at a starting lineup of CJ McCollum, Jaden Ivey, Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson, and then one of Herb Jones or Jonas Valanciunas, or maybe they make a trade for a big man. You'd have the ability to go small, you'd have the ability to go big, you'd have some intriguing lineup options with Jaden Ivey there in New Orleans. Anyway, that's a wrap for this draft profile. Let me know what you think of Jaden Ivey down in the comment section below. I've dropped 3 draft profiles before this on Banchero, Jabari Smith, and Chet Holmgren, so definitely go check them out if you haven't already. And I'm out of here. Until next time, as always, peace out. Go Blazers.